Masechet Yoma Daf 81. We have three topics today. First, about food and drink combining. We saw the Mishnah says that they do not combine, but we're going to learn that that's actually only one opinion. And then the majority part is going to be the next Mishnah, which is a warning regarding Inui. Every prohibition in the Torah, in order to be punishable, has to have both an azhara warning and a punishment. But we do not find a warning for Inui anywhere in the Torah. So we're going to have six possibilities. The first one says there just is no source, but the other five offering various possibilities to find a warning. And lastly, we're going to talk about what is considered edible. If you eat something that is not actually food, not edible, then one is patur for eating that on Yom Kippur. So let's begin from here. Ha-ochel v'shvashoteh and mitztarfin. Mishnah mentioned if someone eats less than a shi'ur, less than a kotebet, and also drinks less than melo lugmav, a cheekful, even if it's 0.9 of one and 0.9 of the other, they do not combine, and the person would not be liable. So we ask, Man Tana, who is the author of this Mishnah that said this? Amar Rav Chisda, b'machloket shenuya v'Rabbi Yehuda Yehoshua. In fact, it is not all opinions, but there's a machloket, there's a controversy about it, and our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehoshua. How do we see this? It's actually a Mishnah that's talking about tum'ah. Ditnan kelal amar Rabbi Yehoshua kol shetumato v'shiuro shaveh mitztaref. In the world of tumah, there are many different types of tumah, and there are different shiurim. For example, a sheretz, a dead mouse. That one is a size of a lentil. It's very small. Whereas a human corpse is a bone is going to be the size of a barley grain. So other things are kezait or kabesa. Also, in terms of time, it's different. If a human corpse impurity lasts for a week, a sheretz only for a day. So Rabbi Yehoshua says, if the tum'ah, the level of tum'ah and the amount that is the minimum amount that is required to impart tum'ah is the same, then those two things will combine together. For example, half of a shiur of a bone from one corpse plus half of another corpse, those do combine, but not if it's of a sheretz. That would not combine. Tumato velo shiuro, shiuro velo tumato. If the level of tumah or the shiur is different, if the level of tumah is identical but not the shiur, or if the amount is the same between two types of tumah but the level of tumah is not the same, or neither are the same, lo tumato velo shiuro and mistafin, they do not combine. So that makes it does make some sense, because if you do say they combine, then how will they combine? If you combine the sheretz and corpse impurity, well, they can combine for 1 day, for 7 days. You're taking apples and oranges; they are difficult to put together. So therefore, those shiurim are not mistaref. If you have 0.9 of the amount of corpse impurity, or 0.9 the amount that you need for sheretz impurity, they will not combine. And so, since Rabbi Yehoshua says that about impurity, that different types do not combine, therefore we apply this to Yom Kippur. Since food on Yom Kippur is a kotebet, the size of a date, and drink is the size of melog lugmav, cheekful, and those are not the same. Therefore, they cannot combine, right? Because there are different measurements, there are different metrics, so they cannot combine. Okay, so we're assuming that whatever he says about tumah would transfer over to Yom Kippur. However, Rav Nachman amar afilu tema Rabbanan, no, not necessarily. Even Rabbanan who disagree with Rabbi Yehoshua regarding tumah, that they don't add up. Ad kan la ka amrei Rabbanan hatam el elyan tumah. They only disagree with Rabbi Yehoshua regarding tumah, and they would say in the world of tumah they do add up. The shem tumah chadhi. This is called tameh. This is called tameh. So they're going to add up, and we'll figure out a way to combine them. We'll take the more stringent, the more lenient. And so, but they only would say that regarding tumah. But regarding Yom Kippur, the whole reason is not about a name of tumah, but rather we're concerned that the person will not be in Inui anymore. He's not going to be afflicted when his mind is settled. And we learned that in order for a person's mind to be settled, that he's not thinking about how hungry and thirsty he is, he has to have either a full shiur of a kotebet, a date, or drink melo lugmav. he has 0.9 of one and 0.9 of the other, his mind is still not settled. And so since his mind is still not settled, they would agree with this Mishnah. So according to Rav Nachman, this is the opinion of our Mishnah. It covers all opinions, Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbanan. Okay, the exercise that we just went through has a parallel in Eretz Yisrael. These were statements from Rav Chisda and Rav Nachman from Bavel, and Resh Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan have the same discussion. V'chen amar Resh Lakish v'machloket shenuya. He says the our Mishnah is subject to a controversy, and Rabbi Yoshua, our Mishnah is Rabbi Yoshua ditnan klal amar Rabbi Yoshua v'chule, and quotes the same Mishnah, the whole thing that we just said. Rabbi Yochanan amar afilu tema Rabbanan ad kan lo kam Rabbanan natam elanian tuma, and Rabbi Yochanan says the same thing as Rav Nachman said, that rabbis would only disagree with Rabbi Yoshua regarding tuma because it's all one name. But here, regarding Yom Kippur, everyone would agree that food and drink do not combine to make a minimum shiur. Okay, so that is the conclusion of the first Mishnah of the Perek, and now we're ready to move on to the second one. Achal v'shata behalem echad eno chayav ela hatat achat. Someone ate and drank within one lapse of awareness. Like he woke up in the morning of Kippur, he forgot it's Yom Kippur today, and he goes and eats a lot and drinks a lot. And then only afterwards he says, "Oh no, today was Yom Kippur by mistake. I ate." So he's going to have to bring a korban chatat. He only brings one because it was within one lapse of judgment. So you see, eating and drinking are all the same prohibition. As opposed to achal ve'asa melacha chayav shenei chataot. If someone wakes up in the morning, forgets his Yom Kippur, and not only does he eat, he also does melacha. He also starts doing some work. He plants something, and so that would be two chataot, because even though it's within the same lapse of awareness, there are two different types of prohibition, two different categories. So two categories requires two chataot. Okay, of course, if it was in two lapses, like he remembers, he eats and drinks, and then says, "Oh, it's Yom Kippur," and then later on in the day forgets again and eats, he would require two chataot, even if it's both eating, because it's two lapses. So therefore, if it's either two different categories or two lapses, require two chataot. But we learn here that eating and drinking is the same prohibition. Good. Achal ochalin shanan riun lachila v'shata mashkin shanan riun lishtiyah v'shata sir o morias patur. If someone eats something that is not actually food, it's not made to be edible, but you eat it anyway, or you drink something that's not made for drinking, patur. For example, pickle brine or fish brine. Those, even though, you don't die if you eat them, but people don't generally eat them, drink them straight. So therefore, patur. Maybe an example today would be like mouthwash. It's pretty dangerous. You don't want to drink mouthwash. Someone decides that they do, and even if they drink the whole bottle, that would be patur, but not recommended. Okay. That's the Mishnah. Now, Amar Resh Lakish. So we're asking, how come there's no azhara for inui? Let me give you an example of how azhara and onesh work. Right? In general, here's a good example regarding melacha of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, you can't do melacha, same as Shabbat. So this is from Parashat Emor, Vayikra 23. Focus on pasuk 28 and 30, the first and last one here. The first one says, "Kol melacha lo tasu be'atzem hayom hazeh." Don't do melacha on this day because it's Yom Kippur. So that's a warning, doesn't give a punishment. And then pasuk 30 says, "Kol hanefesh asher taseh kol melacha b'esem hayom hazeh v'abadati et hanefesh hahi." Anyone who does melacha on Yom Kippur will be destroyed. We understand this is karet. So you see, pasuk 30 gives a punishment. So why the repetition? You need the repetition. Just like in practical day-to-day, if you see someone violating Shabbat, you have to give them a warning first, and only then can the Bet Din give them punishment. So too, the Torah does the same thing. 28 is the warning, 30 is the punishment. So all that works fine regarding working on Yom Kippur. The problem is affliction on Yom Kippur. That's pasuk 29. That's right in the middle. And here it says, Kol nefesh ki kol nefesh asher lo te'oneh. Anyone who does not afflict themselves, be'etzem hayom hazeh, on this very day, nichreta ha'me'ameha, you get karet. So we have a pasuk regarding punishment, but we don't have a warning. We don't have any pasuk that's like 28 that talks about Inui rather than melacha. And so now we have a bit of a problem because technically you can't give someone a punishment if you didn't give them a warning. So Resh Lakish comes to explain why. He acknowledges there is no pasuk for warning, and here's why, because he can't formulate it. So how come there's no azhara be'inui? Mishum delo afshar, there's no way to say it. Language is limited. Hechi nichtov. Nichtov rachamana lo yochal. Right? What does inui actually mean? The one thing that is for sure deoraita and punishable, right? Unlike the other four, if you wear shoes, it's not punishable. So that's eating. If the Torah would say don't eat on Yom Kippur, then I would think achila bekezait. The definition of eating is a kezait, and that would give us the wrong impression because we know that it's not about the act of eating, but rather the act of having one's mind at ease, which is a kotevet. So Torah cannot use the word achila regarding Yom Kippur. So what else could you write? If it says, don't afflict. Well, see, the problem is we want to afflict someone is the verb itself might be afflicted. So you can't put a negative on it. We need a negative commandment. We need a lo ta'aseh that says you shall afflict oneself. But tu'uneh, by definition in that word, is a thing that is a positive verb, so you can't attach a negative to it because then it will sound like don't afflict. That would sound like you should go and eat. So there's no way to say it. That's Resh Lakish's thesis. Now we're going to come up with a few possibilities here that maybe you could say it in one way or another. Rav Hoshaya. Why don't you make up a pasuk like this? A pasuk could have said, "Be careful lest you do not afflict yourself." So this would be a negative and a lot, right? Don't do this. Be careful not to do that. The problem with this is whenever you have a formulation like this, hishamer, we would count that as a lav. Pen, we would count that as a lav. Lo tu'oneh, we count that as a third lav. And if so, nefisha, you have too many negative commandments. You have to start adding 613, 614, 615, and we're not interested in adding so many prohibitions in this regard. So that's not a good formulation. Matkifla Bevai bat Abaye. So but Bevai says, I have another possible formulation against Resh Lakish. Here's how you could say it. Nichtov rachamana hishamer b'mitzvat inui. Be careful regarding the mitzvah of affliction. Okay, so wouldn't that be good? Hishamer, meaning, don't do this. Isn't that a negative word? And we say no. Imken, hishamer de lav, hishamer de aseh, aseh. The word hishamer is ambiguous. It can go both ways. And if you put hishamer together with an active verb, it actually is an aseh. If I say hishamer lo, then it would be in fact a lav. But here, b'mitzvat inui sounds like something that you do with something active. So hishamer would actually count as a mitzvat aseh, not a mitzvat lo ta'aseh. So that's not good either. Finally, matkif Rav Asher nichtov al tasur min ha'inui. Your Torah could have said, don't astray from afflicting yourself. And that is formulated as a lo ta'aseh, and it doesn't have a punishment. And so this could have been a good option. So we say kashya, Resh Lakish, we found a possible way to say not to afflict yourself. In a negative formulation without a punishment. And so we leave it at that. But anyway, Resh Lakish feels like the language is limited. You see, regarding the pasuk 29, which gives the punishment, here you can say it because you could say an if statement. If you don't do this, if you don't afflict yourself, then you will get karet, right? But without a then, you can't just say it. You can't say you shall afflict yourself in a negative way. There's no way to say it. Okay, good. So that's very interesting. This is a fascinating application of the Dibrat Torah Kilshon Bnei Adam, right? Because you think divine language, God can say anything, right? Yeah, but nevertheless, the Torah still has to speak in human language, and human language sometimes has these deficiencies that you have a phrase that will end up being complicated or torturous. And so there's no easy way to give a negative commandment regarding affliction. Okay, so that's answer number one. Resh Lakish says, look, there should be a warning, but there's no way to say it. Therefore, even though there's no warning, it's still going to be punishable. Resh Lakish is not saying you don't get a punishment if you eat on Yom Kippur. You do get a punishment, but there's no way to give the warning, so there's no warning. Okay, that's Resh Lakish. But the other ones are all going to find it. First, we're going to see a long quote, more or less from the Sifra. It's not an exact quote from the Sifra, and it's going to learn it from an extra pasuk in Vayikra 23, which we just mentioned. And then we're going to have Ravina, which uses the same pasuk in Vayikra 23:29, but from a Vayikra.שבת, not from an extra pasuk. Let's look at those two first. V'tana, ma'itile la mehacha. Right. So Resh Lakish, even though you couldn't find one, there's no explicit one, but we can derive one, a warning regarding affliction. Here it is. So this is in Parashat Pinchas, Parashat Hashavua, right? Does compare Inui on Yom Kippur to doing melacha. So that's important. Also says kol melacha. We're going to talk about Tosefet melacha. Let me just introduce that concept. When on Yom Kippur there's a mitzvah to add a few minutes at the start of Yom Kippur and at the end. Start the fast and start not doing melacha a few minutes early, which we do because generally we try to get to the Bet Knesset a few minutes early anyway. Okay, so now in this regard, since you see this pasuk is comparing affliction and melacha on Yom Kippur, keep that in mind. Yachol yehu anush, yehe anush al tosefet melacha, tamud lomar bechol hanefesh asher taseh kol melacha be'a'etzem hayom hazeh. Now, can it be that I would get a punishment? Let's say I'm supposed to add a few minutes. Yom Kippur starts at 7 o'clock. And then at 5 to 7, I still do melacha and I don't add any time. Would I get punishment for doing melacha a minute before sunset on Yom Kippur? So that's why the pasuk says, Be'a'etzem hayom hazeh. On this very day, if you do melacha, alitzumo shel yom anush karet, ve'eno anush karet al tosefet melacha. That on etzem hayom hazeh comes to teach on the day itself, those 25 hours, but not before. I would not get a punishment if I did melacha on the extra time. Fine. Yachol lo yehu anush karet al tosefet melacha v'anush karet al tosefet inui. Okay, you're supposed to add a few minutes to Yom Kippur, also regarding not eating. Now, what if I did? What if I ate 30 seconds before sunset started? Would I get a punishment? Tamud lomar ki chol hanefesh asher lo te'oneh be'asem hayom hazeh ve'nichreta. So this is pasuk 29, right? This is the main one we're going to be concentrating a lot. It says the word "עצם." Again, the word "עצם" is going to mean starting from sunset. Only that person gets karet if it's 30 seconds before. You're supposed to add, but you don't get karet. Good. Now, okay, now we're introducing a new thing, which is that you're right. In order to, you're not going to get karet for doing melacha or inui 30 seconds before, but maybe there's still a lav, and a lav by itself, you'd still get lashes. So maybe you can get a lower level punishment of lashes. So could that be bechalal onesh? So what wouldn't be onesh of karet, but still muzhad, is still an azhara, enough to make it a lav that you'd get lashes if you do work right before Yom Kippur. So for this, we're quoting pasuk 28. You see, we're actually going backwards. Pasuk 30, pasuk 29, then pasuk 28. So from pasuk 30, the last one, we learned that you don't get karet for doing work before sunset. From 29, we learn that you don't get karet for eating before sunset. And from pasuk 28, you learn that there's no azhara even. There's no punishment at all, not even lashes, if one would work in the minutes before sunset. Good. Now, how about inui? See, now we're going to get stuck because there's no more pisukim. So maybe if I eat just a minute before sunset on Yom Kippur, I would be liable to lashes. No, even though there's no pasuk to tell me not, I'm going to learn it from a kavachomer. Vedin hu ma'melacha shenuheget b'shabatot v'yom tov eno muzhad aleha עינוי שאינו נוהג בשבתות ויום טוב, אינו דין שלא יהא מוזהר עליו. So melacha, which applies on other days, Shabbat and Yom Tov, and yet if I work a minute before sunset, there's no azhara, there's no punishment at all. It's still prohibited biblically, but there's no lashes. So inui, which does not apply to Shabbat and Yom Tov, and therefore inui is more limited. So then, for sure, if I would eat a minute before sunset, it would not be liable to lashes. Okay, good. So that's how I learned it from. Okay, here's the main thing. All of this now was a quote from the Sifra as introduction. But here's the main thing that we're looking for, right? Remember, we're looking for an azhara regarding not eating on Yom Kippur, the day itself. Where is the azhara? So here we go. We're going to use this kal vachomer that we just introduced. Lo yomad onesh b'melacha degamad me'inui. In the 3 pasukim I showed you before, we don't actually need to tell me that there's an onesh of karet regarding melacha, because I can learn it from inui, right? Let me show you the 3 pasukim again. I have pasuk 29 teaches me that there's karet if someone eats. Pasuk 30 is karet if someone does work on Yom Kippur. Now, since I can use a kal vachomer that melacha is more expansive than eating, so then I don't need pasuk 30 at all. I could learn that there's karet from pasuk 29 from Ainui. Since pasuk 30 is extra, the Midrash is now going to use that to borrow the azhara, the warning of pasuk 28 regarding melacha. We're going to shift over to inui. So watch how it does it. Minayin lo yomad onesh b'melacha. Don't tell me that there's karet punishment regarding melacha on Yom Kippur, because I can learn that from inui. Uma inui she'eno noheg b'shabbatot v'yamim tovim nosh karet. Melacha she'noheget b'shabbatot v'yamim tovim lo kol sheken inui. Suffering does not apply on Shabbat and Yom Tov, so it's more limited. And yet I get karet on Yom Kippur if I eat. So melacha, which is more expansive, it applies on Shabbat and Yom Tov. All the more so, I would get punishment of karet. Therefore, I don't need pasuk 30 to tell me anything about melacha, that is karet of melacha. So lama ne'emar, so why is pasuk 30 there? Mufneh. Mufneh means it's extra. If it's extra, I can make a hekesh with it. Lakish v'ladun mimenu gezerah shava. Ne'emar kan onesh be'inui, ne'emar onesh bimlacha. It says there's a punishment of karet regarding inui, not eating, and there's punishment of karet regarding melacha. Just like ma melacha lo anash elam ken hizir. Just like regarding melacha, I have pasuk 28 that gives me the azhara. Af inui lo anash elam ken hizir. So too, I'm going to use the gezerah shava to copy over the azhara of work to inui, and there you go. That's how I have a warning for Yom Kippur regarding not eating. Okay, it's kind of roundabout because I gave me an extra pasuk regarding melacha that I don't need in order to tell me the azhara. Would have been more straightforward to just say an azhara. But nevertheless, okay, there it is. So I can learn it through a gezerah shava. Now we're going to reject this whole thing, because like any kal vachomer, you can always find something in the kal that's more chamur, and chamur in the kal. There's always some aspect. Take any 2 concepts, you can always find some way in which one is better than the other. So ikal lemifrach. Hold on, inui is more expansive in the sense that there's no exceptions. Even korbanot in the Bet HaMikdash that are generally eaten on Yom Kippur, the Kohanim do not eat any korbanot. Unlike melacha, even though melacha, you're not allowed to slaughter an animal on Shabbat or Yom Kippur, but for the Bet HaMikdash, we are allowed. Sacrifices are allowed. So we can override melacha, but we cannot override inui. So in that sense, inui is more stringent than melacha. So now that rejects this whole kal vachomer. So we're going to try a whole nother thing. This is all within this midrash halacha. Ela lo yomad onesh be'inui. So we still can find an extra pasuk. We don't need to have a punishment regarding inui. That's the middle pasuk 29, because we can learn it from melacha. But if regarding melacha, which is permitted for sacrifices, and yet anush karet inui shelo tar mikelalo, Inui, not eating on Yom Kippur, which is not allowed at all. You can't eat, even in the Bet HaMikdash they don't eat. Lo kol sheken, all the more so, it would require karet. So lama ne'emar, so why do I need pasuk 29 that says this karet regarding Inui? Mufne, it's extra. Lakish v'ladun min gezerah shava, so I can now make this comparison. Ne'emar onish be'inui, ne'emar onish be'melacha. Regarding pasuk 29 and pasuk 30, both of them say there's a punishment of karet. So what am I deriving from melacha? Since melacha had a warning, so too now I can transfer over that warning to inui as well, and that's where I have it. Okay, so I have it. So even though I flipped around the kal vachomer, I still have a proof. But then we go back, circular. Hold on, I can turn the kal vachomer around the other way again and say melacha applies on Shabbat and Yom Tov. It's more expensive. Inui is less because there's no problem of affliction on Shabbat and Yom Tov. So you can keep going around and around in circles. Okay, the truth is that no matter which way you put the kal vachomer, you do have an extra pasuk, so you can learn the azhara. So that is the response of the Sifra. It's not exactly Sifra, but it's more or less you can find a similar idea there. Okay, good. So that is source number 2. And now the rest of them will be shorter. Ravina. Hai Tana עצם Gamar Mufne. All 3 of those pesukim say the word "עצם." I'll show you in case you forgot. Here, right? That's the warning for melacha. And then 29 says Lo tuneh be'atzem hayom hazeh, and that's the karet, that's the punishment for inui. So I just put etzem and etzem, put those together and make a gezerah shava, and then that's I could do that simply and transfer over the azhara. And it is extra. It has to be extra because if the word is not extra, then you can refute it using the kal vachomer that we had just now. So in fact, it does have to be extra. And how do I know it's extra? It is available. There are actually 5, if you look throughout the Torah, in Parashat Acharemot, in Emor, in Pinechas, if you collect them all together, you'll find that the Torah has 5 times it says you cannot do melacha on Yom Kippur. Why do we need all 5? We don't. We only need 4. We need a warning regarding the daytime, and a warning regarding the nighttime. And another one for punishment if someone does work during the day. Another one, another punishment during the night. Why do you need day and night? Generally, you don't need day and night because we consider them together. However, in this case, since it says on this very day, you might have thought maybe it's only the daytime. But no, etzem means the day and the night. So since day and night is a word separating them, I might have thought otherwise. Regarding other holidays, you don't need a double. But Yom Kippur is formulated specially. So therefore, that's 4 of them. So I have an extra pasuk regarding melacha. And so that's extra. What is it for? It's there to derive, to make a gezerah shava. I can learn the azhara, comparing inui to melacha, and now that's the source of the azhara for inui. Good. That's Ravina. Now we have his opinion. That's number 3. Now, number 4, Rabbi Yishmael is going to learn it from the word inui. Rabbi Yishmael Tana. Ne'emar kan inui, ne'emar lalan inui. He's learning it from in Sefer Devarim. This pasuk is regarding na'ara me'orasa, a woman who's engaged to be married, who is raped by another person. If it's in the field, then we assume it was forced. If it was in the city, then it could have been consensual. It's interesting pasuk because it still calls the word ina. Ina generally means forced or raped. And here it says, it still uses the word ina because here the object of the crime is the husband of the na'ara me'orasa. Okay. Anyway, so says the word ina here, and just like over there, lo anash elim ken, he's here, and so there has to be a punishment and a warning over there regarding that woman. Afkan lo anash elaim ken is here. And this is the word Inui also regarding Yom Kippur. So I can connect them together and I can borrow the azhara, the warning from Devarim, and transfer it over to Yom Kippur. Good. That's answer number 3. Answer number 4. Rav Aha bar Yaakov amar yalef Shabbat Shabaton mishabat bereshit. Shabbat Shabaton. This is hilachem v'nitem nafshodachem ukat olam. So that's mentioned in Acharemot. Yom Kippur is called Shabbat Shabaton, and Shabbat that comes every 7 days. That's what we call Shabbat Bereshit. Shabbat from the time Bereshit also is called Shabbat Shabaton. Ma'alalan lo anash elim ken he's here. Just like the regular Shabbat, there's warnings and punishments. Afkan lo anash im ken he's here. So we can borrow one of those and use it for Yom Kippur. So that's answer number 5. And then we're going to get to answer number 6, which is Rav Papa. Rav Papa Amar, Hu Gufe Shabbat Ikere Dichtiv, Tishbettu Shabatechem. Rav Papa says, I don't even need a Gezerah Shavah. Yom Kippur itself is called Shabbat. Where do we see that? It says Tishbettu Shabatechem. So your Shabbat, and this is regarding Yom Kippur. And so therefore, since Yom Kippur itself is called Shabbat, therefore, just like Shabbat has azhara built in, so too Yom Kippur just uses that same azhara, not through a gezerah Shabbat, just because it is within the category of Shabbat. Good. So that's all 5 opinions. Now we're just going to discuss a couple of them, why they didn't say the other thing. Rav Papa doesn't say what Rav Aha said because he says, use the pasuk itself. I don't need a gezerah Shabbat. It's talking about Shabbat itself, so that's even better. How come Rav Aha, he's the one that learned it from Shabbat Shabbaton? Why hasn't he learned it from this word, Tishbetu Shabatechem? Isn't that more direct? The answer is as follows. He needs that pasuk Tishbetu Shabatechem to learn something else. The pasuk says you should afflict yourselves on the 9th. There's a strange pasuk because Yom Kippur is on the 10th. What do you mean on the 9th? So that means you have to stop eating all day on the 9th and fast for 2 days? No, it says towards the night. So not the whole 9th, but rather later, late afternoon. So if you're saying later, maybe it means when it gets dark. And then, at sunset. And not any earlier. But it says the 9th, so it can't be only the 10th. You have to include some of the 9th. You have to start a few minutes before sunset. You have to stop eating in order to add the tosefet. Good. And from here we can learn that you're supposed to add a few minutes from the day from Erev Yom Kippur to Yom Kippur. Excellent. So now that we know that, I know that at the beginning of Yom Kippur, how about that at the end of Yom Kippur, that you should also add from evening till evening. And so you're comparing the 2 evenings. That's good for Yom Kippur. How about Yom Tov? Also, should you add a few minutes? Yes. Tishbetu, you should rest. Shabbatot minayin, how about Shabbat? Yes. Shabatechem. This is important law. You shouldn't start Shabbat 1 second before. Add a few minutes. That's why we have candlelighting. Even if it's not 18 minutes, a few minutes before, a few minutes after to add some buffer. Anytime it says you should rest, you should add a few minutes. Okay, so since we need this pasuk, Tishbetu Shabatechem, we needed to learn Tosefet Yom Kippur. Therefore, Rav Aha says, I can't use this pasuk for the azhara. I need it for something else. Okay, excellent. Now, the Tana de the Tana before that learned it from the word "עצם," all right, that was Ravina. So since the word "עצם" actually is built into that is the day, only this day, so I really wouldn't need anything else. Why do you have to tell me the 9th? I already told me the "עצם," so what does "עצם" tells me that the 10th only? So what does he do with the fact that the pasuk says, "Oh, on the ninth you should do inui"? My avid le. Good question. There's a famous drasha. Afflict yourself on the ninth. Do we not eat on the ninth? Only on the 10th. Anyone who eats and drinks on the ninth of Tishrei, it's as if he fasted on the 9th and the 10th, right? So we learned that many times. And the idea is that by preparing yourself to fast on the 10th, so the preparation is also part of the engagement in Yom Kippur. You're thinking about it before, so that's good. By helping yourself to fast, by eating, right? So that's like also like both. Another explanation is that Yom Kippur really also is a happy day, right? It is a Yom Tov, and yet with no kiddush, we don't eat. So we kind of celebrate it, the happy part of it on the 9th, and then commemorate the serious part of it on the 10th. So the 9th and 10th are really joined together to be one long holiday, and therefore the eating on the 9th is as important. I think you could add another explanation, which is that the anxiety about fasting that you feel all day on the 9th could sometimes be worse than the actual fasting on the 10th. So eating on the 9th and thinking about the fast is also good and prompts one to make teshubah. Okay, so that concludes that entire topic, and we saw 6 ways of affliction. I should mention one more thing regarding the Tosefet Yom Kippur, which is that in one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Damascus document, it also talks about Tosefet.Shabbat. You should add some time to Shabbat. And so you see, this is not something that is only D'Rabbanan. Actually, here it's considered the Oraita, but it's something that other groups of Jews also practiced and derived from the Torah. All right, and now the last part. Achal ochalin shenan re'ulin achila. If you eat something that's not edible, Amar Rava, kas pilpili beyoma de kippureh patur. If you eat raw pepper on Yom Kippur, that raw pepper is not food. So even if you eat a bottle of pepper, patur, you're not liable. You're not allowed to do it, but you're not liable if you did. Kas zangebila beyoma de kippureh patur. If you chew on ginger on Yom Kippur, exempt. Again, not permitted, but if you did it, you would not bring a korban hatat. Now, question on that. This is regarding a new tree that you can't eat from for 3 years. It says if you come to the land, Untitled and you plant a tree of eating, meaning a fruit tree, then for 3 years it's forbidden to you. So we have a question. If you're telling me that you can't eat from it, don't I know that it's an edible tree? Why do you have to tell me an edible tree? Isn't that obvious? It's coming to add a tree that I might not think is a tree, which is something in which its wood is tastes like its fruit. Kind of like in Gan Eden, right? All the trees there, the bark tasted like the fruit. So what is that? This is talking about pepper. I don't know. I never tried a pepper branch, but apparently it tastes also like pepper. And so this teach, even though a pepper tree doesn't quite look like a tree, I might have thought it's a vegetable. This teaches me that it is in fact a tree, and it also teaches me something else, that Israel is the land of Israel is blessed, and Torah says it doesn't like anything, even though pepper generally grows in India. But Israel, you can grow pepper too. So we learned that pepper is food. What's the point of all this? We just said up here, Rav Aha said, if you eat pepper on Yom Kippur, patur, because pepper is not edible. And now you said pepper is edible because it's considered an edible tree. La kashya, no contradiction. Ha b'retibta, when it's fresh and moist, then it is edible. That's what this baraita was talking about. Ha b'beshta, but Rav Aha, he was talking about dry peppercorn, like we buy, and that's dried out. That is not something you use it as a spice, but you don't eat it straight. So if you're Yom Kippur, patur. Good. Similar point. Next. Amar le Ravina le Mamar. V'amar Rav Nachman. Hai himalta da'atemi be hindu sharia. Someone eats this cooked ginger, some kind of a ginger dessert that comes from India. It's permitted. It's kosher. Even though it's mixed with other things like sugar. So here, according to this, it sounds like ginger is edible. And Rav, you told me above that ginger, if I eat ginger on Yom Kippur, patur, because it's not edible. Which one is it? Same answer. If it's moist and fresh ginger, then it's edible. If it's dried out, then it's not edible. That's what we're talking about regarding Yom Kippur. Good. Teno Rabbanan. Achal ale kanim patur. Luleve gefanim hayav. If someone eats leaves of reeds, exempt, because leaves are not edible. But if you do eat the shoots of a grapevine, the shoots are edible and therefore chayav. So Elohen luleve gefanim. What's the definition of a shoot? It has to be something that's fresh, that grew recently. Amar bi Yitzchak Migdala'a. Yitzchak from the city of Migdal said, Kol she'lib lebu merosh Hashanah v'ad Yom Kippurim. If it grew from Rosh Hashanah till Yom Kippur, in other words, it's less than 10 days old, it's called a shoot, and it's soft and it's edible. Rav Kana Amar Kol sheloshim yom. Even 30 days before Yom Kippur, that's all still called fresh and edible. Tanya kevated Rabbi Yitzchak Migdala'a, and we have a baraita that expands on agrees with the expansive definition of 30 days. And here it is: Achal ale kanim patur velulebe gefanim chayav. If someone ate the leaves, patur, that's not edible. Lulav, the shoots is chayav because that is food. What's the definition of something that's a shoot? If it's from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur, so it actually supports the first definition, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. That was the more limited definition of only 10 days. Okay, we're almost done. One more halacha. I know some people are waiting for mincha. The last halacha is as follows: Shata asir o morias patur. If someone drinks pickle juice or fish brine on Yom Kippur, they are patur. So since the Mishnah mentioned only those two things, hachometz chayav. What if you drink vinegar? Vinegar apparently is drinkable, and so if you drink it, it's chayav. Matnitin maneh. Whose opinion is this? Rabbihi, must be Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. The Tanya Rabbi Omer chometz meshivet hanefesh. Rabbi said vinegar is good to drink. It's healthy, revives the spirit. Right. So go drink some vinegar. All right. Now, Darash Rav Gidel bar Menashe mibere denerish. En halacha kerebi. One time, Rav Gidel, he came to a city called Bere, a town called Bere in the city of Nerish, and he said halacha is not like Rabbi. Rabbi said that vinegar is a drink, and if you drink vinegar on Yom Kippur, you would be chayav. But he said halacha is not so. So in other words, Rav Gidel is saying that vinegar is not a drink, and if you drink it on Yom Kippur, patur. What happened? He said that in a public forum, which anything you say in a public forum like that is halacha l'maaseh. So l'shana nafke kule alma mazgu v'shetu chala. So the next year he came back and he saw everybody in the town. They all drank vinegar on Yom Kippur. They're thirsty. Like, oh, he said we were allowed to drink vinegar. Shamar Rav Gidel ve'ikepad. He heard about this and he got upset. Why did he get upset? Amar, Ema de Amar Ana di'abad lechatechela mi'amre. I said, b'di'abad, if you happen to drink vinegar by mistake, then you're patur. I didn't say you should go out and do it. Ema de Amre Ana purta tuba mi'amre. I said only a little bit. I didn't say go drink a whole bottle. Emar de Amre Ana chai mazug mi'amre. I said live vinegar, straight vinegar, but not if you mix it with water. And the people in the city here, right, they mazgu, they mixed it with water. So they were trying to find, they used Rav Gidel's words to try to find a loophole to be able to drink something on Yom Kippur. So Rav Gidel came the next year and said, that application is not what I had in mind. All I had in mind was that vinegar is generally not drinkable. So if someone by mistake drank some vinegar, then they would be patur. All right, that's a very interesting halacha, and we'll end with that. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.